Rain poured from the black sky, heavy and cold. The alley was dark, filled with broken machines, rusted pipes, and trash piles that moved with rats in that dirty corner of the alien city. A small figure hid behind a stack of crates. She was thin, her blue skin covered in dust, and her silver hair stuck to her cheeks like wet string. Her clothes were torn rags, barely enough to cover her. Her stomach growled loudly, but no one could hear it over the sound of engines and shouting crowds nearby. She peeked out carefully, her big glowing eyes scanning the street. Vendors shouted in loud voices, trying to sell food to busy workers. The smell of grilled meat and sweet bread filled the air, making her mouth water painfully. But she knew better than to step out too soon. Last time, someone threw hot oil at her and said she was a thief. She still had the burn mark on her arm. Then she saw Itavenda dropping a small piece of bread near the trash bin. Quickly, silently, she moved like a shadow, her bare feet splashing in the muddy water. Just as her hand reached for the bread, a boot kicked it away. A tall alien merchant shouted, "Filthy street rat, go die somewhere else." She didn't reply, only lowered her head and backed away slowly. She wasn't allowed to speak, wasn't allowed to fight back. She was nothing in this world. Then came a voice different from the others. "Hey," the voice said, low, but not cruel. She looked up in shock and saw a human man standing there. He was wearing a worn-out jacket, sleeves rolled up, a bit of flour on his hands. He held out a piece of fresh bread toward her, warm and soft. Her eyes widened, her body froze. She wanted to grab it, but what if it was a trick? The man didn't move, just kept his hand out. He didn't call her names, didn't ask for anything. "I saw you watching the food stand," he said gently. "You must be starving, still." She didn't move. Then her stomach growled again. Louder than before, ashamed, she reached out slowly, fingers shaking. Just then, loud buzzing filled the air. Security drones swooped down, red lights flashing, sirens screaming. "Unauthorized vagrant detected," the drone said. "Step away." From the civilian, the girl screamed and fell backward, covering her head. She was sure she was about to be taken or worse. But the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the drones. He raised both hands, palms open, calm but firm. "She's just a hungry girl," he said. "I gave her the food." "Violation of Public Order 17A, the drone replied. "You are interfering with street cleansing." The girl stared up at the human, shocked. Why would anyone risk that for her? Nobody ever had. Nobody even noticed her before, but this man. He didn't look afraid. "She's done nothing wrong," the man said again. "If giving someone bread is illegal, then maybe your laws are broken." There was a long pause. The drones hovered silently, processing his words. Finally, one of them beeped and backed off. "Warning issued," it said. "Next violation will result in detainment." Then the drones flew away, vanishing in two. The sky, the girls still sat on the ground, too scared to move. The human knelt beside her and offered the bread again. "Let's get you someplace dry," he said. "You can eat inside." She looked at him with eyes full of fear and hope. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why?" "Because I don't like watching people suffer," he said. Simple as that. She followed him, slowly. Holding the bread like it was treasure, they walked through winding streets, away from the crowd, past flickering signs and rusted doors. Finally, they reached a small diner on the edge of the sector. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and smelled like soup and spices. She stepped inside for the first time in years. Feeling real warmth on her skin, he pulled out a chair and pointed at the table. "Sit," he said. "You eat first, then we talk." And she did. With shaking hands and eyes full of tears, for the first time in her life, she sat at a table, not behind it, not under it, at the table like a person. And someone was kind. Enough to notice she existed. Asterisk the girl sat at the corner table like she was sitting on sharp glass. Her back was straight, hands folded tightly in her lap, as if afraid to touch anything. She didn't look around. Didn't blink much, only stared at the piece of bread the human had given her. Steam rose from a bowl of soup in front of her, but she didn't move. The human noticed. Wiping his hands on a towel as he walked out from the kitchen, "You can eat," he said kindly. "It's for you, I promise." She nodded slowly, but her fingers trembled as they reached for the spoon. When she dipped it into the soup, the scent hit her hard, meaty broth. Real vegetables, warm spices. Her stomach growled again, louder this time, like it had given up hiding its hunger. She brought the spoon to her lips and paused. Her eyes darted toward him, still unsure, still waiting for the trick. But the human only pulled out a chair across from her and sat down. Smiling gently, the first taste broke something inside her. The warmth of the soup, the softness of the bread, filled more than just her belly. It reached deep into her chest, into the hollow place where trust used to live. Tears formed in the corners of her glowing eyes, but she blinked them away. Quickly, she ate slowly, like someone who didn't know if the food would disappear if she looked away. And still, the human said nothing, just watched to make sure she was okay. The diner was small and quiet, with only a few booths and metal stools by the counter. It smelled like baked bread and fried onions. Outside, the rain still tapped against the windows like soft fingers. Inside, it was warm, safe, almost unreal. She looked at the human, finally whispering, "Why are you helping me?" He leaned back in his chair and thought for a second. "You looked hungry," he said. "And I've been there too." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever explained kindness to her like that. Where she came from, kindness costs too much, and most people didn't have enough to spare. "Are you a soldier?" she asked, noticing the scars on his hands. He chuckled, shaking his head. "No, just a cook. Used to be a miner. Got tired of digging holes in dead rocks." She nodded, not understanding everything, but feeling a strange calm in his voice. "My name's Jonah," he added. "And you?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. He didn't rush her, didn't push. Just waited. Finally, she said softly, "Narala." It was the first time in years she had spoken her real name. It felt strange and beautiful on her tongue. "Nice to meet you, Narala," Jonah said, as if her name mattered, as if she mattered. She stared at him again, studying his face, the lines near his eyes, the calm in his posture. He looked tired, but not weak. Wounded maybe, but not broken. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt a strange thing in her chest. Hope. Just then, the door creaked open, and a customer walked in, a tall man in a clean uniform, his face sharp and judgmental. His eyes landed on Narala instantly, and his nose wrinkled like he had smelled something bad. "Jonah," he said loudly, "what's that doing in here?" Narala froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She looked down, already bracing for the shove, the insult, the order to leave. But Jonah didn't even stand up. He kept sitting, arms folded across his chest. "She's a guest," he said firmly. "And she has a name," the man scoffed, looking around. "Your place is gonna lose customers if you start feeding strays." Jonah stood now, not in anger, but with power in his quiet voice. "Then I'll lose them," he said, "but she eats here now." The man grumbled something under his breath and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Narala looked up slowly, confused, her eyes wide with fear and awe. "You didn't have to do that?" she whispered. Jonah shrugged, heading back to the kitchen. "Yeah, but I wanted to," he said. "No one deserves to be treated like trash." She stared at the soup again, then at her reflection in the spoon. For so long, she believed she was less than nothing, but maybe Just maybe, she was more. Maybe this place, this table, this man, maybe they were the beginning of something new. Not survival, but living. Not hiding, but being seen. She finished the soup quietly. Every bite a miracle. When Jonah returned, with a blanket and a soft roll of bedding, she didn't know what to say. "You can sleep in the back," he said, pointing to a small storage room. "It's not much, but it's dry and safe." Her hands clutched the blanket tightly, eyes wet again, and in the smallest voice, she said, "Thank you." Jonah smiled and turned off the lights, leaving her. In gentle silence, outside, the rain fell softer now, like even the sky was beginning to change. The storage room was dark and quiet. Old kitchen boxers were stacked to one side, and empty shelves lined the back wall. But to Nirala, it felt like the safest place in the world. The blanket Jonah gave her was soft and warm, and the floor didn't shake beneath her like the factory floors did. She curled into the blanket, not because she was cold, but because she finally could. For the first time in what felt like forever, she closed her eyes without fear, but sleep didn't come easy. Memories clawed at her from the darkness, pulling her back to the screams, the hunger, the cages. Her breath came fast, her body trembling as her mind drifted to the place she never wanted to see again. The labor camps, metal collars that shocked her if she moved too slow, guards who laughed when she cried, and machines that never stopped grinding. She was just a child when they took her parents. Her people were captured during a planetary raid, nothing political, just business. The rich wanted new workers, cheap and obedient. Her father resisted, he was shot. Her mother begged, they took her anyway. Nirala was dragged off in chains, a number burned into her arm. Her name erased from all records. They told her she was a thing now, not a person. And after a while, she believed them. She woke with a sharp breath, her body damp with sweat. Her hands gripped the blanket like it might disappear. Footsteps approached. The room and the door opened slightly. A soft, yellow light spilled in from the kitchen. Jonah stood there, holding a cup of warm tea. He didn't ask questions, didn't force her to speak. He simply said, "Bad dreams." She nodded slowly, eyes full of shame. "Yeah," he said, placing the cup beside her. "I have them too." She didn't know why, but her lips parted and words began to fall out. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was his calm presence. Maybe she was just too tired to hold it all in. "I was born on Nerax 4, she whispered. "My family. We were farmers." Jonah sat down on a nearby crate. "Not too close, not too far." She kept talking, her voice shaking but steady. "They came one night, took everyone, said we belonged to a new owner." Her hands tightened around the blanket. "I didn't see my mother again, not after the ship left orbit." Jonah didn't interrupt. He just listened, really listened, like her words mattered. She talked about the cages, the forced work in the recycling plants, the cold meals thrown on the floor, how she learned not to cry, because crying only got you noticed. How she escaped through a broken duct during a blackout. She lived in the streets after that, hiding from patrols, stealing food, getting beaten when caught. Years blurred together, but the hunger never left. The loneliness grew even bigger than the pain. "I thought I'd die in that alley," she said softly, her voice barely more than breath. "But then, you gave me bread." Jonah's eyes were gentle, but filled with something deep understanding. "I know what it's like to feel forgotten," he said. "I grew up in the slums of Mars Alpha 3. "Really?" she whispered, surprised. "Yeah," he nodded. "Parents died in a mining collapse. I lived in shelters, picked scraps, got into fights." He smiled faintly. "Someone helped me once, just one person, but it was enough." Nirala looked at him closely. "You remember?" "Their name?" "I do," Jonah said. "Old woman named Mara ran a soup cart. Gave me food and a place to rest." He chuckled. She said I looked like a walking skeleton. Gave me a broom and made me clean for hours. Narala gave a small smile, the first real one he'd seen on her face. Sounds like her and I would have been friends. She said. Jonah stood and stretched, leaving her with the tea. You get some rest, Narala, he said. You're safe here. Her smile faded a little. As he closed the door, safe, it still felt like a dream. She sipped the tea slowly, letting the warmth spread through her chest. She whispered her name again under her breath, just to hear it spoken, Narala. Her name, the thing they tried to take from her, it still belonged to her. And now, someone else knew it too. She lay down again, not to hide, not to cry, but just to rest, and this time, when she closed her eyes, the nightmares didn't come so fast. Instead, she saw the soup, the light, and a human sitting across the table who didn't ask for anything in return. A man who listened, who didn't flinch when she spoke her truth. Maybe he wasn't just offering food. Maybe he was offering something bigger. A chance to be human again? Morning came slowly, through gray clouds and the soft hum of city life. Narala sat at a small table in the corner of the diner. Wearing a clean shirt Jonah gave her. It was a bit too big, but it was soft. And it smelled like soap and warm bread. She sipped tea quietly, still unsure if this peaceful moment would last. Jonah stood behind the counter, flipping something on the grill, humming a quiet tune. The diner was closed for now, just the two of them inside, and for a brief moment it felt like a home. She helped clean the counters, her hands learning how to move gently again. No one shouted at her, no one rushed her. Jonah only smiled and said, "You're a fast learner." That small praise made her heart swell. No one had called her useful in years. No one had called her anything but a burden, a ghost or a stain on the street. But as peace settled over the diner, so did the sound of approaching footsteps, heavy boots, more than one pair. Jonah looked up sharply, his body stiff, his hands slowly lowering the spatula. 3 shadows appeared. Outside the frosted glass door, then a knock, cold and official. Jonah moved quickly and quietly, nodding once to Narala. "Go in the back room, now," he said, voice calm but serious. Her heart skipped. "Is it them?" "Could be," he whispered. "Just go, I'll handle it." Narala slipped into the storage room, her breath already shaking. She crouched behind the boxers, hugging herself tightly through the thin wall. She heard the door open, and the voices that followed harsh, clipped, and clearly military. "Citizen Jonah Bray," one voice said. "We received reports of an undocumented alien hiding in this district." "I run a diner," Jonah replied flatly. "People come in hungry. I feed them." "There is a specific girl," the voice said. "Young, silver hair, blue skin. Around 15 units of age, sounds like half the galaxy." Jonah said calmly. "What's she done?" "She is unregistered," another voice answered, colder than the first. "She escaped forced labor. Likely dangerous, possibly infected." Narala bit her lip hard, the words stabbing deep. Dangerous, infected. Those words followed her everywhere. Words used to erase her humanity, to make people turn away. Then she heard Jonah's voice again. Stronger now. "If she was here, I'd say she was hungry, not dangerous." A pause. Then, a sharper tone. "If you are found harboring her, you'll be charged under interplanetary law. Section 1(2)D. Jonah didn't respond at first. Then said, "I read that law." He stepped forward, voice low and firm. "It also says, no person, human or alien, should be denied food or shelter during a crisis." The room fell silent. Narala clutched the edge of a crate, her heart racing. Would they drag her out? Would Jonah be arrested? She couldn't let that happen. Not to him. He had done nothing wrong, only helped her. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. But before she could stand, the door slammed shut again. The footsteps faded slowly. The metal boots finally disappearing. Into the street she waded, breath frozen, until the storage door creaked open. Jonah stood there, eyes tired, lips pressed tight. "They're gone," he said softly. For now, Nirala stepped out slowly, still shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to bring trouble here." Jonah shook his head and crouched in front of her. "This isn't your fault," he said. Looking her in the eyes, existing isn't a crime, no matter what they say. She blinked hard, her throat closing with emotion. "But they'll come back, won't they?" "Probably," he said, "but we'll figure something out." She looked at him with wide eyes, her voice barely there. "Why are you still helping me?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because you remind me of someone," he said, "someone I couldn't save." He stood and went back behind the counter, grabbing a small bag and a datapad. "If they come again, I want you far from here," he said. "Someplace they can't reach you." Nirala's voice cracked. "You're sending me away?" Jonah paused, then shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "I'm going with you." She stared, not understanding. He smiled faintly. "You think I'd let you face this alone?" A silence passed between them, filled with fear, gratitude, and something else, something strong, something like family. She didn't say thank you this time. She couldn't. Instead, she walked to the counter, picked up a rag, and began cleaning. Side by side, without words, they worked like they always belonged together. Outside, the skies darkened again, storm clouds rolling in, just like the trouble ahead. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, someone would stand beside her, and if the authorities came back, they'd find more than a scared girl and a tired cook. They'd find a team, a bond, a promise not so easily broken. The storm hit just after midnight. Rain slammed against the roof of the diner like falling metal. Thunder rolled across the city skyline, hiding the sound of quiet footsteps and closing doors inside the kitchen. Jonah packed small bags with food, tools, and emergency credit chips. Nirala stood near the door, her arms crossed tightly, her heart pounding too fast. They were really doing this. They were going to run. "We have to move before morning patrols scan this block," Jonah said, checking his wristpad. "There's a contact in Sector 12, old friend from my mining days. He owes me." Nirala nodded, even though fear twisted inside her like a knot. Running used to mean survival, but this time it felt different. She wasn't running alone anymore, and that made it scarier and somehow better. She wore a long coat Jonah had given her, with a hood that covered most of her silver hair. He had cut the hem so it wouldn't drag on the ground. She looked like a tiny traveler from some forgotten colony, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a street ghost. She felt like a person on a journey. They slipped into the alley just before the first patrol lights swept past the diner windows. Jonah led the way, moving fast but careful. He knew the back roads, the sewer grates, the dead ends with secret exits. He had lived on these streets too, once. Now he moved like a ghost who knew where all the shadows lived. As they passed an old warehouse, a noise startled Nirala, clanking metal. She froze, grabbing Jonah's sleeve. He raised a hand slowly, peeking around the corner. Just a trash bot. Broken and limping, he exhaled, gave her a soft nod. "You're doing great," he whispered. Her chest lifted a little at the words. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was escaping, with someone who believed she could. After an hour of weaving through back alleys and abandoned transport docks, they reached a rusted lift hidden behind a pile of old tires. Jonah pressed a hidden button under a panel once, twice, then paused. A slow hum filled the air as the lift descended from above. Inside stood a woman with a cybernetic arm and a hard stare. "Jonah Bray," she said, voice flat. "Didn't expect you to call in that favor so soon." "Didn't plan to," Jonah replied. But things changed. The woman glanced at Nirala, eyes narrowing. "She's a kid," she said. "You're risking a lot." Jonah shrugged. So was Mara when she helped me. The woman's expression softened for half a second. She stepped aside. "Get in, I'll take you to the depot." The lift rattled as it descended below the surface. Steam hissed from the walls and the lights flickered like they were fighting to stay alive. Nirala held Jonah's hand tightly, her eyes darting everywhere. She had never been underground this deep before. She half expected chains or guards to appear at every turn, but none came. Only the quiet hum of machines and the echo of her own breath. At the bottom, the woman led them through a tunnel lit with old green lamps. They reached a docking area where a cargo ship rested, ugly and perfect. "Cargo route to an off-grid colony," she said, pointing at the ship. "Humans and aliens live side by side there. No scans, no patrols, no questions." Jonah looked at Nirala. "You sure about this?" She stared at the ship, then at him. "I'm sure if you're coming," she whispered. He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then we go together." They climbed into a crate filled with old fabric and sealed boxes. The woman handed them a breather mask and whispered, "It'll be a rough ride, but you'll make it." Nirala looked at her, confused. "Why are you helping?" The woman didn't answer at first, then said, "Because someone helped me once too." The crate door closed, and darkness swallowed them. The ship engines roared to life, shaking the ground below. Nirala huddled beside Jonah, feeling the vibration in her bones as the ship lifted off, leaving the city behind. She felt something strange, not fear, not pain, hope. Hours passed, or maybe days, she couldn't tell inside the crate. But Jonah kept whispering stories to her, old tales from his mining days, silly jokes, memories of Earth sunsets. He kept her mind busy, her heart steady, and she began to laugh again, just a little. When the ship finally stopped and the crate opened, sunlight poured in soft and golden. Fresh air filled her lungs, clean and warm. They stepped out onto red soil under a purple sky. A colony stretched out before them, farms, homes, smiling faces of all species. Jonah placed a hand on her back. "Welcome home, kid." And for the first time in her life, Nirala believed it. This wasn't just escape, it was a beginning. The red soil was soft under Nirala's feet. She had never walked on ground that wasn't concrete or metal. The air was warm, and the wind smelled like fruit, firewood, and something sweet she couldn't name. For a long moment, she didn't speak, didn't move. Just stood there with the sun on her face. Jonah stepped beside her, a soft smile on his lips. "This place is different," he said. "People don't care where you came from, only who you are now." They walked toward the main colony building, a wide dome surrounded by small houses and green fields. Aliens and humans worked side by side, laughing, trading, planting crops. No guards, no fences, no patrol drones. No one looked at her like she was a threat. Some nodded politely, others smiled, and one alien child waved. Nirala blinked. Unsure how to react, Jonah gently nudged her shoulder. "You can wave back, it's safe," and she did. A little shy, but it felt good. A woman with thick braids and mechanical boots greeted them at the entrance. "Jonah Bray, I didn't think you'd ever settle," she said with a chuckle. "Not for me," he replied. Then turned to Nirala. For her, the woman looked at Nirala. Eyes kind. "You'll find peace here, little one," she said. "And work, if you want it. Work." The word used to mean pain for Nirala: chains, punishment, hunger. But here, it sounded like a chance, a new start. Jonah showed her a small cabin near the fields. 2 rooms, 1 window, a real bed. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, safe, hers. He gave her a toolbox, old but working, and a bag of simple clothes. "You'll need these," he said. Every hand helps in the colony, even mine. She nodded slowly, still unsure if this was all a dream. Later that day, she walked into the kitchen building, drawn by the smell of baked bread. Inside, she found a large oven, shelves of spices, and a short woman with 6 arms mixing dough, looking for work or food. The woman asked without looking up. Nirala hesitated, then said, "Both." The woman grinned, then grabbed an apron, little shadow, and so she did. She learned to knead dough, slice vegetables, stir sauces until they smelled like magic. At first, she moved slowly, afraid of making mistakes, but no one yelled. No one slapped her hand. The woman corrected her gently, saying, "Mistakes are part of learning, not punishment." Nirala began to smile more, laugh even, and her hands stopped shaking when she held a spoon. Jonah visited her every evening, sometimes just to say hello, sometimes to help clean dishes. They sat outside her cabin at night, watching the twin moons rise over the hills. She told him about her favorite herbs, the ones that reminded her of her mother's cooking. He told her about Earth, about snow, chocolate, and a thing called music festivals. Nirala couldn't imagine so many people gathering just to dance and sing. It sounded like something from a fairy tale. Weeks passed, then months. The colony accepted her like a drop into a river, quietly, completely. She planted a small garden behind her cabin with glowing flowers from her home planet. Jonah helped her build a small table, rough but strong. One evening, she looked at him and said, "I want to stay." His smile was soft and proud. "I was hoping you would." One morning, a merchant ship landed nearby, bringing supplies and travelers. Nirala stood behind the food counter. Wearing a clean apron and holding a tray of fresh pastries, she saw a young alien girl outside. Skinny, shaking, eyes full of hunger and fear. The girl stared at the bread on the table, but didn't come closer. Nirala stepped out, walked to her, and gently said, "You don't have to be afraid. Come eat." The girl hesitated, just like she once had. Then, slowly, she reached out and took a piece of bread. Nirala led her inside, sat her at the table, poured her soup. Jonah watched from the doorway, arms crossed, a warm look in his eyes. "You've changed, Nirala," he said later, as they cleaned up. "No," she whispered, "you changed me." He shook his head. "You just remembered who you were meant to be." That night, Nirala sat by her window, watching fireflies float above the grass. She didn't feel lost anymore, didn't feel cursed or hunted. She felt full of food, of warmth, of something more, belonging. Years passed, quietly, like wind through tall grass. The colony grew. The fields stretched wider, and more travelers found their way to the peaceful valley. What once was a small kitchen inside a dome became something more, something beautiful. It was called Nirala's Table. The sign was hand-carved, simple. But everyone in the colony knew what it meant. It wasn't just a place to eat, it was a place to rest, to be seen, to be safe. Nirala stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her hands strong and confident. She moved with purpose, smiling at every customer. Alien children sat at the long tables, laughing, eating her famous honey rolls. Miners, farmers, and engineers all came here to start or end their day. Even the local leaders stopped by, often not for politics, but for her soup. She had grown into herself. Her hair was longer now, braided with small glowing beads that shimmered when she moved. Her eyes still held the same gentle light, but no more fear. People didn't look through her anymore, they looked to her. And at the center of it all, like always, was Jonah. He still wore that same old jacket, patched up in places she had sewn herself. He spent most of his time fixing things around the colony, teaching the younger ones how to repair solar panels or build water filters. But every day, without fail, he sat at the corner table, the first one they had shared together back in the city. It had been rebuilt, polished, and placed near the window. It was his spot. and everyone respected that. One evening, just before sunset, Nirala brought him a plate fresh bread, roasted vegetables, and a note folded beside it. Jonah raised an eyebrow as he picked it up in her handwriting. The note read, "Thank you for saving me when I was just a shadow. I never forgot." He smiled quietly and folded the note into his jacket pocket. "I didn't save you," he said. As she sat beside him, "You saved yourself. I just handed you the bread." They sat together in silence, the golden light pouring through the window. Outside, children played in the grass, chasing tiny floating lights that danced in the air. Nirala rested her chin in her hand, eyes soft. "I used to think I was broken," she said quietly. "But I was just waiting for someone to believe I wasn't." Jonah leaned back, arms crossed. "Sometimes all it takes is one person," he said, "to look at you and say, you deserve better." Later that night, a new ship landed in the colony. A tired-looking trader stepped out, followed by a small alien girl, thin, shaking with wide eyes. Nirala spotted them instantly. She walked outside, offering a warm smile, a gentle voice, and a piece of bread. Held in both hands, the girl stared, too scared to speak. Nirala knelt down. "You're safe now. Come inside. We have a seat for you." Jonah watched from the window, his heart full. He remembered the night she had followed him through the rain, clutching bread with both hands. Now she stood tall, a protector, a giver, a symbol of hope, and in that moment, he knew something deep. His journey had meant something. It hadn't been just survival. It had become legacy. The little girl was given soup and a blanket, a place near the fire. She stared at the glowing garden outside the window, planted by Nirala herself. Jonah whispered, "Looks like we'll need a new chair at our table." Nirala smiled. "We'll make space." The stars came out one by one. Jonah leaned back, watching them through the glass. His hands were older now, slower, but they still felt steady when they reached for his cup. Nirala rested her head on his shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was a trembling teen in the storage room of that old diner. Now, she was strong, but she never forgot where she came from, or who sat beside her when the world turned cold. "I don't know what I would have become without you," she said, voice soft. Jonah closed his eyes for a moment. "You would have made it," he said. "You're tougher than most I've ever met." She chuckled, wiping a tear before it could fall. "Still," she whispered, "I'm glad it was you who found me." And so, the table stayed full of food, of laughter, of second chances. Strangers became guests. Guests became family. And Nirala's table became a legend not just in the colony, but in every ship that passed through. They said there was a place where no one was turned away, where a once hungry girl gave every lost soul a meal, a name, and a future. And at the corner table, under the warm lights, a human named Jonah always sat quiet, proud, and never alone again.